Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. So today's video is going to be my March reading wrap up. As I'm sure you could tell for the thumbnail, we had some fancy editions we read this month. I think I read like 8 books this month. It wasn't bad, but let's just get into it. The first book that I read in March was Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller, and I must say I did really like it. My Goodreads like really messed up. I couldn't put in a review or a rating for this book only. I could do it for other things, so it's super weird. But anyway, I think I gave this book like 4 stars. It was a lot of fun. It was different than I thought it was going to be. So she's, the premise is that she is kidnapped or forces herself to get kidnapped by this rival pirate team to kind of bring them down. And she ends up kind of falling for the first mate. And the imprisonment while she's on this ship, while she did it on purpose so she could try to find this map on their ship. That was like most of the book, and I guess I wasn't expecting her to be kidnapped for most of the book, but it was really interesting. I liked the like twists that you kind of find out about her. I liked the banter between the two characters. That was a lot of fun. The pirate theme and like the ruthlessness and all of that was just so fun and such a good time. I've said fun like 6 times, but it was a really good time. I really enjoyed it. It was fast, it was cute, it was fun, it was reckless, it was dangerous, a little bit cold-hearted, bloodthirsty type situation. But yeah, I liked this a lot. I also thought it was interesting, which I guess makes sense, but that women aren't affected by siren calls. That was cool. I know I'm rambling and this doesn't make any sense, but it was just a really fun time, and so I did end up reading this. And I also read The Daughter of the Siren Queen because it is a duology, so I read the whole duology in March. And this one was also very fun. It went a different direction from the first book, and you know, a lot of stuff happened in this one that was really crazy and cool as well. It was a really fun conclusion to this duology, like how she wrapped everything up and how she brought the pieces of the story together and tied it all together. It was really cool and interesting. I might have liked this more than the first one, but I think that's just because it had a different feel to it. I guess I liked the direction this one went more because she was like imprisoned on the ship for such a long time in the first book. This one, there was a lot more adventure and a lot more things happening. So I think I appreciated that. It was great. I'm very happy that I bought these Fairy Loot editions now because I really liked the duology. And you guys were right. I know several of you wanted me to read it and you guys were right. I did really like it. So I'm glad that I finally have this under my belt, and I'm excited to be able to continue to read from this author. From there, I ended up reading one of the books on my last chance book challenge situation, and that was Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. This is the first book in the Aurelian cycle, and I've been trying to read this for years and just never picked it up, but I finally did, and I finally read it, and I loved it. Loved it. Spoiler. It was so good. The political intrigue, the reality of war and rations, the idea that good and bad both seem rather gray when either choice means people die, like all of it together, and dragons, all of it together was just so good. Having to shoulder the burden for those around you, like knowing whatever decision I make, people are going to die and people are going to hate me, but I have to take this blame to protect everyone. Like, oh, it was all so good. And the dragons and the familial ties and tension and found family versus blood and just, oh man, this was good. And it had dragons. So I understand why Elliot Brooks raves about this now because it was just fantastic. I gave this 5 stars. Amazing. Can't wait to continue the series even though I'm not doing it right now. Man, so good. It's heavy. It's not necessarily happy, but very good. So if you're interested in that at all, pick it up. So good. And while I said that, because this is the book of the month edition, I am going to still get rid of it and get the normal editions, or maybe not, and just hope and pray somebody, Fairy Loot, somebody does some special editions of this trilogy because it deserves it. The next book that I was able to read was on my Sprayed Edges bookshelf challenge, and that is River of Shadows by Karina Halley, something like that. This was interesting. So this is inspired by Norse mythology and like the death god, etc. So this book was okay. It wasn't necessarily what I expected it to be. I wasn't sure what I was going to get going into it. I found the gruesome elements this had different from a lot of fantasy romance, which is cool and like set it apart a little bit, as well as the Finnish elements. I'm sorry, I said North mythology before. It's not, it's Finnish mythology. And I've never read anything like that, so that was cool. The story did not go how I thought it would. It just didn't. I don't know what I expect. I expected it to follow, I guess, a similar path as a lot of the other ones, and it did not do that, which was refreshing, actually, and strange at the same time. The spice was okay. It was a little off-putting for me. It was like, I don't know, I just didn't love how it came about. However, there was a scene, or a couple of scenes, where it seemed like assault was gonna happen, but the death god, I guess, the love interest, if you will, it's kind of not a love interest though, because he's like kidnapped her. There's like a part where like assault could happen, and he backs off because he wants her to be a willing participant. So that's also very refreshing. Sometimes you don't get that in books like this, and I hate that. I hate it. So I'm glad that that was kind of like brought up and addressed and handled well. I appreciated that. But yeah, it was just okay, but it wasn't bad. And I want to know what happens, so I'll probably continue the series. But is it my new favorite? No. Was it bad? Did I hate it? Absolutely not. Like, it was fun. I liked it. The death elements, the like death unicorn that talks, hilarious. So there was parts of it that I liked. And yeah. There you go. Oh, I don't know if I said, I gave that 3 stars. The next book I read has been a long time coming, and it is my first book from this author, and that is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So the first book is technically called The Final Empire, but I think with this rebranding, they've just renamed it to Mistborn instead of it being The Final Empire, because everybody calls it Mistborn anyway. So I not only got the new paperback, which is very flop, I not only got the new paperback, but I did read this. So I finally read the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. Now I have thoughts, okay? I have thoughts. So I really liked this book. I did. But I was pretty frustrated for a good portion of this book by not explaining the magic system, okay? Or mentioning a person like, oh, they're a smoker, and then not explaining what that means or how it ties into the magic system. That was very frustrating for me. It's kind of like info dumping, but it's also not giving you the information. And I was pretty annoyed at that for a good portion of this book, because I just felt like, because there's ways to do that where to be like, they don't really explain the magic system completely all the way, but they say like, oh, he's a smoker, that means he can do this. They didn't do that. They'd be like, that he's a smoker. Does he smoke cigarettes? Like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I don't know this world, right? So I was a little frustrated with that. It goes into more of the allomancy and what the different metals burn and what happens when you burn the different metals, what different metals there are. But it really doesn't go in depth and explain it to you, probably because it's complicated, and he felt like if he explained all of it to you right away, you wouldn't get it, which is okay. Yeah, I understand that. But I was confused. It felt like I was kind of thrashing a little bit, trying to figure out what was going on. That frustrated me a little bit. The plot itself, you pretty much know what's going on. Like, they're a rebellion that's trying to overthrow this evil empire, right? So, like, that's pretty easy to track with. And it's kind of like a heist, infiltration, taking down the system type situation. I guess I should explain that first. But, yeah, they're basically trying to take down the final empire from the inside out, and from, like, a heist of, like, stealing the fortune or the metals to then use against them and turning the people against them. Yeah. Anyway, so that really bugged me. And something my husband said was when he was reading it, he would look up a lot of the information so that he could figure out what was going on. But, and the conversation we had is, you shouldn't have to do that. When you're reading a book, you shouldn't have to look up what's happening from outside sources. They should be able to show you and to tell you. And I felt like that was not the case. And I tried to look some stuff up, and then I got spoiled and was really frustrated. So, but aside that, the story was interesting and I did really like it. I loved Ellen. So for a hot second, I was like, do I like any of these characters? I don't know. It wasn't like I disliked them, but I wasn't like drawn. You know how sometimes you just like cling to a character and they're like, yes, that's my favorite. I loved Ellen. Loved him. He was my favorite, which was probably no one's favorite. Well, I'm not going to say that, but like, I'm sure other people really like Van or really like Kelsier, but I loved Elend. He was so great. I loved him so much. Finn was cool. I really liked Kelsier as well, but Elend is my dude. And just speaking about characters, I was enraged at what happened to one of these characters towards the end of the book. I was so mad. Like, Brandon Sanderson, how could you do that to me? I'm pissed. Didn't like that at all. And I'm just like, how is this going to continue? I hated what happened to the character. I hated what happened after that. Ugh, I hated it. It also seems really curious to me that this is the first book in a trilogy, considering all that took place. It seems like this could be a standalone. So in that aspect, I have no idea how this trilogy is continuing. Like, literally, I feel like the entire story was wrapped up in this book. Like, of course, there's some loose ends that you could leave hanging, whatever, but I feel like what usually happens in a trilogy happened in this book. And so I'm like, well, what's gonna happen in book 2 and book 3? I don't understand. But it was good. I really enjoyed it. I was really frustrated for parts of it, but I really liked it. I will continue. But I don't know if this was the best first entry into Sanderson. Like, I don't know. I mean, Way of Kings is, I think, too intimidating. But I don't know if this is a good introduction. I also don't think it's a good introduction if you've never read fantasy before, because you'll be so confused. Let me know your thoughts on that, if you agree or disagree. But bottom line, I did really enjoy it, despite my frustrations. And I did give it 4 stars, and I love the new covers. The next one I read, I actually listened to, and that was the Foxglove King by Hannah Witten. I really enjoyed For the Wolf by her, and just really want to keep following her works. And this is a new trilogy, if not series. I'm not really sure. I think it's a trilogy. And that series is called The Nightshade Crown. And I just have such complicated emotions with her books, and I don't understand why. I feel like I should have loved this book, but instead I feel like it was just okay, but not my favorite. It could be the mood I was in. I really wasn't feeling it at the time. I was like listening to it. Parts of it were intriguing, and then I was just kind of bored sometimes, or zoning out. Maybe not bored. Bored's probably the wrong word for that, but kind of like finding myself losing my attention, zoning out, which is strange because I was interested enough that I didn't DNF it and didn't want to DNF it. But like I said, I would find myself like, it would be losing my attention sometimes. And so maybe that's attributed to the mood I was in, the time I was reading it, I don't know, or listening to it, I don't know. But it was just, something was off for me, and I couldn't tell you what. I liked the 3 main characters. The tension was interesting, the dynamics were interesting. The 3 separate characters that have to come together and work together, even though they're kind of, not hate each other, but they do kind of hate each other at the beginning, was interesting. All the different political aspects and the parts at play with this, interesting. The magic as well was interesting and cool. I don't know, I just still continue to feel kind of blah about it, and I don't know why. I also think maybe part of this was my expectation for this book going in was not what this book was. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was an assumption or something that was said or how the synopsis was written. I really don't know. But I thought she was gonna get like kidnapped by the Fae, to be honest. And that's fine. Like, you don't have to do that. I don't care. But I thought she was gonna get like kidnapped and drug into another world, but that's not the case. It's like, it's the same world, and it's the ruling king at the time. So I thought it was kind of like a portal fantasy, or like she gets drugged into this other Fae world or whatever, some other magical world. But that's not what this is. And if you thought that, it's wrong. She's a poison runner, and she is caught essentially, and instead of killing her, they're like, you can be put in prison and die, or you can help us try to figure out what's going on in this situation, who's trying to betray the throne. That's more of the situation. So she ends up living in the castle with the royalty and befriending the prince, and she's also with the Preskmore, which is kind of like warrior monks, I think is how it's described. So it's kind of like the religious sect, but they're also police. Kind of. But they're not police because that's also the kingdom. It's weird. Anyway, so she's thrown into having to work with this warrior monk, Preskmore, and this prince. And she has this dark, like, death magic that's unprecedented. It's more powerful than anyone else's because the Prescamore also have it. There's a lot going on. And you're trying to sort this out as you go. And they're trying to uncover this plot to take over the world. And there's also a lot of deaths happening in these villages that they're trying to solve the mystery of that. So all of that. I just feel kind of blah about it. I don't know why. I feel like I should love it. The banter was funny at times. There was tension with the characters, like I said. One really interesting aspect of the story is like I said, she's a poison runner. And the poison is literal poison, like foxglove, belladonna, like those types of poisons. But in this world, that's kind of like drugs. And it's just very interesting because you can use it and it'll like give you a high, but if you use too much of it, you can die. And it's just so interesting how they do that juxtaposition between drugs, alcohol, and poison. I just thought that was so cool. Like, that was really interesting. And if you use it, it can also kind of prolong your life. It's so weird. But if you use it too much, it can make your veins like turn to stone and you can still be alive, but it's like really weird. You can be like strung out. It was interesting. She built a pretty cool world, even though I was feeling strange, even though I didn't know how to feel about it. It was a pretty cool world. So I did like it. I will continue, but I just feel like with her books, I just feel so weird about them. And I don't understand why, because I loved For the Wolf and the rest of them, I'm just like, eh. I don't know, but I gave this 3 stars. I will continue. There you have it. Last book that I completed in March is Queen of Legends by Frost K. This is book 2 in the Dragon Isle Wars series, and this was not on the docket, but I had a very small window of it being March before April, and I was able to listen to this real quick because it was like 8 hours long on the audiobook. So I finished it in the nick of time. And I'm glad I did because this is also in my 23 for 2023 challenge. And I loved the first book, and so I was very anxious to get to this book as well. And I didn't like this book as much as the first one, which was disappointing. There were parts of this I enjoyed with the tension between the main characters, Eric and Ren. It was really interesting. I liked that a lot. You really get, I think, more of the Raylo fanfiction tension in this one. But I loved that. I loved the tension. I love that he's kind of, I just love the tension. I guess I can't tell you why I love the tension because it would spoil it. But overall, it felt a little disjointed. I just felt like there was a lot of stuff going on, but it was kind of like, it didn't flow well, I guess. And it just felt like it was like this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And it didn't flow as well. And the first one I felt like was really good and really loved, and it took me by surprise. But this one was just like, okay, maybe it's a little bit of middle book syndrome where they're just building different things to a climax that will come. Yeah, I felt like it was a little subpar, little disjointed. I still liked it, and I'm gonna read the 3rd and final book, which is Throne of Serpents, that's coming out this year, I believe. I still will finish the trilogy, but I just didn't know, you know, it was just okay. I gave it 3 stars. I was a little disappointed, honestly, because of how much I liked the first one, but still curious to see how the 3rd book wraps everything up. And I'm just going to throw this in here to kind of give you a status update. I have it in this like Illumicrate book sleeve, but this is Brightheart. I did start it. I'm more than halfway through. I'm at page like 213. So I'm gonna finish it soon, and I'm just gonna carry it over until like the first part of April because I want to know how this ends. I freaking love Abraxas as a character. He's like my favorite ever. I love him, and so I'm very anxious to continue the series, and I want to, so you can't make me stop in April. So I'm gonna continue. So those were all the books that I was able to read in March. Please let me know your thoughts on this. If there was books that you thought I would love, that I was ho-hum about, books you thought I wouldn't like, that I loved, or just your thoughts on if you've read any of these books, or, you know, just what you read in March. But as for now, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.